Here comes to our last plenary speaker in this session, Professor Josh Byrne. He's the Dean, Sustainable Futures, Curtin University. Many of you probably would recognize Josh as a presenter in the ABC's Gardening Australia. Today, he will tell us about the design and operation of his 10-star net zero emissions family home in Fremantle, Western Australia. Since 2013, the Josh House Living Lab has demonstrated a range of solar and low carbon technologies, including best practice solar passive design, the early adoption of battery storage, all electric appliances, and EV charging. 10 years on the project continues to provide a platform for applied research and knowledge sharing with industry and the wider community. We also have incorporated his building in the IEA SHC report, upcoming report. Let's listen to the story of Josh House Living Lab, a 10-year solar journey. Please, Josh.
Thank you, and good morning. We're going to switch gears from the highly technical to the highly practical and applied. And I'm going to share a story that is both professional and very personal in nature, because this living lab is my family home. We set out to build our first family home about 12 years ago, and as you would know, it takes time to plan, design, get approvals, and then finally build the house. So it was 10 years in June of this year since we moved in. And my wife and I and 2 young children primarily built it as a family home, but my wife, like myself, is an environmental scientist. And so for us, it was always going to be an aspiration to build a highly efficient, low carbon home. But I also felt I had an opportunity and a responsibility through building our first family home, given my work in the media, to challenge a range of what I felt were misconceptions. Primarily that was that high performance, energy efficient, thermally comfortable homes had to be expensive and complicated. And of course, those of us who work in the industry or have taken the time to do some research know that that's not the case. So we set ourselves a very public challenge, which was to set out to build not one, but 2 10-star family homes. And to do that using a volume builder that hadn't done that before, to use mainstream building construction techniques, and to do it for the medium volume house price. Back then, it was $1,200 a square metre, would you believe? Haven't things changed in 10 years? But also to incorporate a range of solar technologies. PV, yes, and that's been the focus of the discussion so far, but also solar thermal technology and, of course, the original solar energy utilisation, photosynthesis, by having a garden around our home that help make the home comfortable, improve its energy efficiency, and contribute to our health, well-being, and lifestyle. So look, just very quickly, the 2 homes, our family home is in the back there, and you can see that in winter mode with the roof off. So typical solar passive design principles for the southern latitudes, well established. East-west orientated, north-facing elevation, mainly glazed, shared living spaces towards the north to capture that warming area, designed 2 rooms deep to allow for good cross-ventilation in summer and heat purging, and then shading structures and deciduous trees on the north for summer shade and winter light. And then the house at the front, which belongs to my sister-in-law, is in summer mode there with shade sails up, deciduous trees in full canopy, providing plenty of shelter. The homes are very simple. There's nothing particularly new in the design, but they're ideas that have been set aside or forgotten about, largely because the inclusion of low-cost air conditioning in modern homes. And we were able to design both these homes to a 10-star NatHES energy rating, guided by the use of BERS Pro as a modelling tool to make good decisions about orientation, materials, insulation, and basic building fabric considerations. You can see there's plenty of areas for garden because we chose to have compact homes. We also chose to use the HIA Green Smart program as the rating framework for all of the other sustainability features. So the focus here is on the solar and energy efficiency innovations. But the homes also collect and recycle most of their own water. They're designed for universal access through wider doorways and flush thresholds and hobbler showers. They're designed for good air quality. And of course, the landscapes, as I mentioned, provide food, support biodiversity, and help with human health. So with the house designed essentially arranged to capture warming winter light to keep it warm and to exclude unwanted solar heat gain and to then cool down in summer using simple shading strategies, deciduous shade trees, and shade sails that come up in summer and down in winter. As I mentioned, we used typical building materials, so high thermal mass materials to stabilise the internal temperature, concrete slab on ground, internal brick walls, and then reverse brick veneer walls on the east and west. So brick on the inside for that mass, and then timber framed so there's room for insulation, both bulk and reflective, to protect those east and western walls. So being guided by the modelling exercise, we were able to get maximum bang for buck with materiality to get the performance up. Not over-specifying, but specifying for what is suitable for Perth's climate zone. Lightweight, light-coloured roof to reflect the solar energy rather than absorbing it and heating up. Anti-con, both bulk and reflective insulation under the roof sheeting. And then, of course, bulk insulation in the ceiling itself. All standard stuff, but when worked together as a system, roofing material, anti-con, and ceiling insulation, you get much better performance. And then appropriate glazing. And for us, that meant low E glazing. We didn't need double glazing in our mild climate because we had the windows in the right place. And then we also used good old-fashioned drapes to open up in winter to let the light pour in during the day, but then to close up at night time to keep that heat in. And the landscaping and its role in providing that shading during summer and allowing light in. So you can see there, this is the northern elevation, shade sails, grapevines on the northern pergola there, some lawn, well-planted gardens around for cooling, lightweight surface treatments just to the north of the windows so you don't get radiant heat bouncing back, and then further supported by the low E glazing that reduces that radiant heat transfer. All simple measures, but really showing that landscaping plays a key role in the performance of a solar passive home and reducing the heating and cooling loads of the home itself. So this is a graph that shows a midday temperature recording both inside the home in the main living area and outside the home over the course of the year. And you can see there with the blue line just how stable the temperature of the home is, and this is with no mechanical heating or cooling, only relying on that sun in winter to warm and the cooling breeze in summer to cool. We have ceiling fans to give that sense of movement on still days, but very, very comfortable as a home. Now we have temperature sensors in all of the rooms of the house and throughout the fabric of the home, in the slab and in the walls, and we've done detailed performance monitoring and we've published a lot on the results. And guess what? No surprise, these design ideas, they work. They've been around for a very, very long time. So moving on to some of the other solar energy considerations. When we first designed the home back in 2011-12 for that 2013 build, the low carbon technologies of the day for volume housing was rooftop solar for electricity production, solar thermal hot water system with a gas booster. And that was the cost-effective, accessible technology. And the thinking of the day was to slightly oversize the PV system to offset any gas use. And so we had a 3 kilowatt PV array, a 2.5 kilowatt inverter, and then the solar hot water system with the gas booster, just for boosting during winter. With the booster mounted on the roof, so there's no energy lost between the hot water system collection and where it's boosted. And the booster is the last point of energy consumption, set equidistant to all the hot water demands in the home. So all of these practical considerations thought through. And I'm calling this stage one, because over the 10 years, technology's moved on. And as a living lab, we've made modifications to the energy systems, and that's what I'll explain to you, and how far we've come just in 10 years in terms of volume adoption of these technologies. Likewise, the mainstream cooking practices of the day was electric oven, but a gas cooktop, which we installed. All of the other stuff is still pretty common. High quality ceiling fans, energy efficient appliances, energy efficient lighting. At the time, LEDs were still a slightly more expensive option. Now they're the standard. Try getting anything else other than LEDs in a new home. They're the most cost-effective option, both to buy and also to operate. But we also put in daylighting strategies, so solar tubes and things like the hallways and the walk-in robes to reduce the need for artificial lighting. Not just to save energy, even though the energy use is fairly small. It's about providing natural light and improving indoor comfort and well-being. The first technology upgrade in our home came in 2015 when we installed what was then the first behind-the-meter lithium iron phosphate battery on the Southwest Interconnected System, which is our integrated grid in the southwest corner of WA. Now, I'm sure there were plenty of illegal batteries going on, but this is the first legal one. And we know that because it took nearly 6 months to get it approved through our state utility, Western Power. What an unattractive beast that battery is. It was the only one that was approved. It was made by BYD. So a 10 kilowatt hour, 9 kVA unit. Would you believe one unit is for the batteries? The other unit is for the energy management system and the cooling fans. And what we didn't realise from reading all of the product literature, which was, a very thick technical manual, and that was about it. It wasn't really customer-facing material. Was that it had a very high parasitic load to run the energy management systems and the cooling fans. And ironically, it ended up being the highest energy-consuming appliance in our house. And this is the beauty of using a home like this as a living lab, because we were monitoring its load, not only what it was able to produce in terms of stored energy and making that available to the house, but also the energy required to run the thing. But overall, it still was a very positive outcome. And you can see here from the data that we collected over a period since installing it. So that dotted blue line is a typical daily energy profile for a house like ours in Perth. So similar housing typology, similar family occupation. And you can see pretty standard there, the 2 peaks in the morning and the evening. The dark blue line is our home before putting the battery in. And you can see a fairly similar profile, but just reduced in its extremity because of the efficiency of the home, particularly smaller peaks in the morning and evening. And the orange line is our solar generation prior to the battery. Again, that typical duck curve. The grey line is what happened when we put the battery in. You can see that we're soaking up that excess solar rather than it going to the grid, and we're knocking out the peaks. So it did work, but the issue was that it chewed a bit of power, about 1.5 kilowatt hours a day to run the thing. For a battery that was only 10 kilowatt hours in size and also had its own cutoff point at 20%, which was recommended by the manufacturers to maintain the health of the batteries. But also after 9 kVA, it would switch itself off. It would shut down. So as time moved on, by 2018, what we were seeing across Australia was this transition to all electric homes. Again, going back in 2012, 2013, electric homes were still considered old school, and old electric appliances were being made redundant, and inverted commas, natural gas, more efficient appliances were being put in still. Batteries weren't even on the horizon. But what we'd seen through our work running a series of living labs with volume builders and major land developers through our research work with the CRC for low carbon living was that all electric appliances and highly efficient ones were becoming more mainstream and more competitive, including things like heat pumps, which were reaching parity with solar hot water systems. And so we made the switch and put in a solar hot water, sorry, I beg your pardon, a air source heat pump. We're also seeing that induction cooktops were moving from being boutique appliances and very expensive to becoming also very accessible in the volume market. What was also becoming more apparent and more widely discussed was the health impacts of burning gas inside the home, not just for heating, but also for cooking, especially considering that most people don't bother to clean the filters on their stovetop exhaust vents. And so there was a growing body of evidence that was showing that burning gas inside the home increases the likelihood of childhood asthma, increases the chance of cardiovascular disease in people of all ages, including kids and adults. And so for us, both on health grounds, but also wanting to understand what it was like switching from gas to induction, we swapped that out as well. Now, this meant a reconsideration of both the PV system and the battery system because we'd increased the loads, especially with the induction. PV technology had also moved along a great deal and the price had come down. And so we put it in a 6.6 kilowatt array, and these are sun-powered panels, highly efficient, one of the highest efficiency domestic panels at the time, and a 5 kilowatt inverter, which is the cap on the Swiss in terms of still being able to get approval and your feed-in tariff. But also we upgraded the battery, recognising the challenges that I mentioned with the previous unit, especially the fact that it would trip when we'd start to have high loads, which of course isn't very convenient. So we put in the LG Chem Resu 10, again, 10 kilowatt hours, but it charged quicker and also wouldn't trip and didn't have the same parasitic load. So throughout this process, we're metering just about everything we could. Appliance use, all the different circuits, the generation of power, the sources of power, whether it was from PV, battery or grid backup. The latest inclusion has been charging an electric vehicle. So we've recently purchased a BYD Atto 3, one of the first of the true volume market cost-effective EVs. It's got a 480 kilometre range on a full charge. After a small state government rebate, it costs around $44,000 for a very comfortable SUV. So arguably, this is now a mainstream vehicle. So we purchased the car and also got a Feronius SolarWatt Pilot, which is a home charger. Now, this charger, other than being able to provide up to 22 kilowatts, meanwhile the BYD has a cap at 7 kilowatt intake, so while not fully matched to this particular car, we're set up for cars in the future that might need a higher charge rate. But what this does is it allows us to put it onto what they call an eco mode, where you can set it so any surplus solar that's being generated, rather than exporting to the grid, goes straight to the car. So it becomes a very convenient way to charge the car completely on solar energy, but also to soak up that solar energy that is much better being used locally rather than exported into the grid at the time where most other homes that are grid connected with PV are also exporting excessive solar and causing challenges for Western Power. And it has a very neat app with a very handy interface that tells you what your energy balance is. And here's just a snapshot from a recent reflection on the app, where you can see that we're producing at just about capacity of the inverter. We are just about full with the battery, and we're charging the car all at the same time with no export to the grid. Now, overall, the home in its current configuration, with all of those energy infrastructure updates that I mentioned, uses about 30% less power than a typical Perth home, same size, same occupancy. But keep in mind that we are also charging a vehicle and we're providing most of our own water. Unlike most homes, we have pumped rainwater, we have grey water, and we have a shared bore with our neighbour, making the most of the superficial aquifer. So it's efficient, it's productive, and it works very well. What we've done over these 3 phases is then document the impacts of this adoption of different technology. So the first phase, when we first built the house, when we had dual fuel for cooking and solar hot water boosting, but with no battery, you can see that the home was operating comfortably at net zero, but we're exporting quite a bit of power to the grid and having to pull back from the grid. But overall, it's a comfortable, positive net balance. Then when we included the battery, the first BYD DES, you can see there that we reduced the amount of imported energy requirement because we're making the most of more of our own solar energy generation, but and also then comfortably net zero. But it's becoming more grid friendly because we're reducing the import and export exchange. And then finally, the current system is almost a little bit embarrassing because it's a mini power plant. Now, one of the things is that we do tend to live a lifestyle where I work locally. We only have one car and we have a shared electric bike. So we might not be, the typical Australian family. So our EV use is quite small. When we model all this to sort of size the system up, we assumed charging 2 electric cars and doing the typical amount of daily commute travelling for people in Perth. And so the system should be just about balanced. But of course, we don't do that. Our kids go to school locally, we walk locally, and work locally and reduce our vehicle use. But it just shows, even with full electric homes, with the inclusion of EV charging, just how energy productive these homes can be. We've also maintained a community engagement and communications campaign throughout this whole project. And that started by putting together a communications plan, and it was all about sharing this journey in a very public way. We put together a website, which we still maintain today, joshshouse.com.au. We produced a series of videos that documented the whole journey through the planning, design, construction, operation, including the recent upgrades that I've touched upon. We had an open day event when we first opened the home, and we had 4,000 people roll up to have a look. We only managed to get 3,000 through the door, and I kid you not, the other 1,000 stayed out the front and had a party. It was quite an experience. Now, we had planned ahead and we invited some suppliers and we organised a pizza and a coffee van, and buskers rocked up, and it was quite an exercise. We only had one of these because my family freaked out so much. They said, right, that's it. But I flagged this to show you the level of interest in people wanting to see the practical operation of doing this kind of work well. Now, again, I will put to you, there's nothing that we've put together in our home that is groundbreakingly new on its own, but it's carefully considered integration and thought through in a way that's effective and practical. And that's what people are looking for. accessible information. What we've also been doing is working out how we share these learnings with industry to see the most effective examples and practical outcomes working their way into design guidelines for other projects. So we work very closely with Development WA, who are the West Australian state government land developer, and they have recently made a commitment that all of their developments will now be all electric, no fossil gas. Now, I certainly commend the Victorian state government for making this commitment at a state level. Unfortunately, in Western Australia, we're not there yet as an entire government, but at least Development WA, as the state developer, has made that call. And so what we've translated into design guidelines now in a number of projects are these very simple messages. Firstly, no fossil gas. We need to electrify. We all know that. So we can rapidly move to a grid and an energy system that's fully supported by renewables. To have homes that are a minimum 7-star NatHES rating. We went for 10 stars because Josh's 10-star house as a strong messaging point is much better than Josh's 8.5 or 9-star house. But we know that anything 7 stars or 7.5 stars and above is a high performance, very comfortable home, provided that is actually done through proper modelling and it's built properly and verified. Recommending heat pump hot water systems, induction cooking, minimum 4-star rated air conditioning, ideally split systems, just in the rooms where it's needed to make sure or to reduce the chance of overrunning systems. Minimum 3.5 kilowatt PV to reach that net zero. But what we typically find is people are putting in 6.6 kilowatt arrays and 5 kilowatt inverters. Being battery storage ready, and we say that because the battery storage can be behind the meter or battery storage can be at the neighbourhood scale, and we're seeing a combination of both, and then being EV ready. These are very simple, very cost-effective strategies that, of course, are available now. So where to next? Well, firstly, we'll continue to live in our home. We'll continue to collect data as we do. We share that data openly as open source data. We continue to share that on our website. I continue to film there regularly for ABC Gardening Australia as sort of soft diplomacy for sustainable housing. The focus might be the veggie patch or pruning the fruit trees, but in the background you see the northern elevation of a solar passive home with a PV array and an EV parked in the background. So this is soft diplomacy stuff. But with my work with Curtin University and in partnership with the Race for 2030 CRC, we've recently launched a major new national research project called Pathways to Net Zero Precincts. And the focus here is how do we scale up the transition to net zero within the built environment. I've tried it for 10 years, one house at a time. It's a slow burn. Precincts provide an exciting opportunity to work at scale, but also we feel they're the right scale to be able to integrate the technologies such as solar energy generation, storage, electric vehicle charging, and the smart systems that can help share that power at that right diverse scale. And so we've designed this project that looks at a series of precincts spanning residential, mixed use, and light industrial or business parks. So precincts that are part of the built environment urban fabric. And we've partnered with a number of local government, private sector developers, and also a range of universities, with Curtin University leading the 5-university collaboration. And it's about embedding our researchers in real life precincts. We have 11 case studies all up around Australia, of which 5 are in Perth. And we've chosen these precincts that span from planning phase, some are in construction, and some are already in operation, including several precincts that we looked at with our research as part of the former CRC for low carbon living. And the idea is to understand what are the opportunities, what are the key things, either barriers to overcome or new things to scale up and deploy elsewhere to rapidly decarbonise at the precinct scale. Again, as you would expect, there's a major focus on knowledge sharing with the production of videos capturing the journey. Our website, netzeroprecincts.au, which will be launching in February at the moment. It'll take you through to the Race for 2030 project page. But in February of next year, at the ERICA conference in Curtin, we'll be launching the website and launching the first of the videos that will share this learning journey over the next 3 years and beyond. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Josh. It's great to see a lot of things happening in the built environment, which is my background. Any questions, please? Oh, there are so many questions.
Thank you, George. It's a very presentation. I'm Zingelen from CSO. As you know, we CSO are also with the Zero project in the north of Melbourne. But unfortunately, we have no so detailed audit like you do. So my question is, from your more than 10 years now, so you still, or these 10 years, you have no use any air conditioning for your home?
No, we still have no air conditioning.
Okay.
But what's interesting, can I make a very public confession to you all here? Because I kind of feel like I need to get this, I need to socialise this. So we designed our home as 10 stars, performed beautifully. We've monitored it. It's very comfortable. But what's interesting is that, of course, there are periods where if the weather is either in winter, if we get a number of cloudy days and the house can get a bit cool, but mainly it's summer, if we get a heat wave, it can get uncomfortable. And uncomfortable for us is sort of 28, 29 degrees, but also the humidity builds up. And we had a very unseasonal heat wave about 3 weeks ago in Perth where we were up around the high 30s and low 40s for 5 days straight, but also very high nighttime temperatures. This home is designed to cool down because of our fairly reliable summer diurnal swing. So it doesn't matter about the hot day, it's the cool nighttime that cools the house down. It heat purges, cools the mass down. As we're getting older, and my wife in particular, she's not tolerating heat as well as she used to. And so she said, look, I want to get air conditioning. And I'm like, oh my God, here's me swanning around in my board shorts, not the most pleasant sight perhaps these days, but on a hot day and being quite fine under a fan. But she said, look, it's getting uncomfortable during these periods. Why don't we look at putting in air conditioning? So we've been looking into that, and the fact that we're generating so much surplus solar on top of doing all the other things that we need to, we're looking to install air conditioning, and of course we'll run it when there's surplus power. We'll cool the house down, including cooling the mass down. So this is something that when we designed the home we wouldn't have thought of, but with, again, the improvements in HVAC and the fact that we have surplus solar energy, it's now something that I'm trying to get over the ideological barrier of not having air conditioning, realising, you know what, perhaps it's okay. So that will be the next adaptation to our energy system at home and the next set of data that we'll capture and keep sharing.
Because so many people, I just another one quick question. So for more than 10 years now, we are talking about you talking about the zero emission, zero energy. I will list the triple zero. That means zero energy, zero emission, zero energy bill. So for your house, so many years, you still pure energy bill?
We are typically in surplus. There are times if we are charging the car outside of production where we might, in a 6-weekly billing period, we might have a bill, but it's very small. And that normally happens over the winter period where our generation and our export is also lower. Yeah. But on a typical net basis, we're in front. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can discuss.
Sure.
Thank you. Because of time, I only allow one more question, and I have decided to dedicate that question to Anita because I think it's quite important for scientists to talk to engineers.
Okay, I actually have two questions. One is very technical and one is not. Do you want to choose?
It's up to you. I'll happily take either.
Okay, so I won't ask the technical one.
Okay.
For people who make decisions not based on carbon dioxide emission, but based on economics, are you able to tell us how much money you've saved? And also, does it get to a point where you won't save more money but spend more money to make it 000?
Yeah. Okay, great question. So let me break it down by stage very quickly if I can. So yes, working out the cost and payback periods was an important part of this work, especially in the first phase where we published all of those results as part of our work with the CRC for low carbon living. And in that first stage, the first configuration, we were saving around $2,000 a year on bills. Okay. When the battery that was installed, the payback period was outside the life of the warranty. It was very early technology. Okay, so we didn't install that for cost recovery purposes. We installed that one as an experiment. It was part of our research work, and a demonstration project. But also we wanted to increase the utilisation of our solar generation. So very much driven by wanting to reduce emissions. The third phase of those upgrades, if you were to take out the fact that we actually took out appliances that were still working and put new ones in, again, because it was an experimental work. And I should also say, needless to say, all of the things that were taken out and still operational were put back into circulation. So they were either gifted or sold or repurposed in some way. Nothing was wasted. But all of those devices, the air source heat pump, the induction cooktop, all have very clear positive payback periods within their warranty period and their expected life cycles. The payback period of the PV system and the upgrades was for a typical home with higher loads would be around 3.5 years. For ours, because we're so energy efficient, perversely, the payback period is longer. The battery, again, break even. Do you know what the clincher was? The EV. So by including the EV in the whole of system costing and business case, we were able to, and that's how we presented it, because it's an integrated approach to this. We had a payback period for all of those upgrades in that final phase 3 of 8.8 years. Largely driven by the fact that we had reduced operational costs and including no need to buy petrol anymore and reduced servicing. So when we present these things as an integrated costing model, it's a positive business case. Now, again, to finish off, you'd all be aware of the continued reduction in cost of all of these items and also the enormous amount of work that's been done by ATA, or now Renew, both for consumers on the NEM and consumers on the Swiss, about the fact that it is a positive business case to go all electric. But the timing is to replace things as the old appliances as they come to end of life. And that's the messaging we need to make sure that's clear. And of course, for new homes, it makes sense straight away to go electric, to put in appropriate size PV systems, to be sensible about, the time of operation of high load appliances to make the most of that solar energy, and then continue to work to transition about how we incorporate storage into the network, whether it be behind the meter or at the neighbourhood or community or grid scale, or more than likely, a combination of all those things.
Thank you, Josh. Very interesting story. Thank you.
Thank you.